อีกเพียง2 วันเท่านั้นที่พวกเราทุกคนจะร่วมกันขีดเขียนประวัติศาสตร์หน้าใหม่ของการเมืองไทยการก้าวไกลประเทศไทยไม่เหมือนเดิม
A man can win an election, lead the largest party, build a governing coalition, and still fail to become prime minister. That is not a movie plot. That is Thailand in 2023. Pita Limjaroenrat's Move Forward Party won Thailand's general election, securing 151 seats and becoming the largest party in parliament. But when Parliament voted for Prime Minister, Pita received only 324 votes. He needed 375, and he was just 51 votes short. So the question is not simply why Pita lost. The deeper question is this. What happens when voters choose change but the political system refuses to deliver it? This is the central question behind Pita Limjaroenrat's memoir, Almost Prime Minister. And surprisingly, this book changed some of my own views about him. Pita Limjaroenrat is probably one of the most recognizable politicians in modern Thailand. He comes from an established business family. He studied overseas, including at Harvard. He entered politics relatively young and eventually became leader of the reformist Move Forward Party. I jokingly call him Thailand's Justin Trudeau. The comparison is not entirely superficial. Both come from elite families. Both entered politics young. Both cultivated modern, charismatic public images. Both divorced celebrity spouses and later had relationships that continue to attract media attention. For years, I personally viewed Pita mainly as a highly marketable political celebrity, perhaps even overly entertainment-oriented. Living in Thailand, I witnessed many of these political events at close range. This book slightly changed my opinion, not dramatically but enough, because behind the celebrity image, the book reveals someone who genuinely spent years trying to change Thailand's political system from within. Whether one agrees with his politics or not, the sincerity of that effort is difficult to dismiss. If you only follow Thai politics from headlines, you might think elections are simple. People vote, the winner governs, the loser waits for the next election. Thailand shows something more complicated. You can vote. You can mobilize millions. You can become the largest party and still not govern. Because power does not only reside in elections, it also resides in constitutions, courts, procedural rules, coalition bargaining, independent agencies, and unelected institutions. This book argues that Thailand's political challenges are fundamentally institutional. Again and again, Pita returns to one idea. Thailand's problem is not simply who governs. It is how power itself is structured. From the outside, Move Forward's 2023 campaign looked emotional. Huge orange crowds, young voters, viral videos, political celebrity. But inside the party, the campaign was surprisingly technical. Pita describes how his party built one of Thailand's most sophisticated political data operations. Years before the 2023 election, volunteers were already collecting vote counts manually from polling stations across the country. They cleaned the data, entered it into databases, analyzed the voting patterns district by district. By 2023, data had become a political weapon. The party identified different concerns in different provinces. Phuket cared about decentralization. Southern provinces cared about multicultural rights and human rights. Older communities responded strongly to pensions, land ownership, and local economic opportunities. Move Forward did not campaign with a single national slogan. It localized the national reform. However, reading this section, one impression repeatedly surfaced for me. Outside agriculture, many of Pita's policy discussions feel almost like consultant-style analysis. Problems are categorized, data are gathered, policy options are mapped. This approach is intellectually rigorous, but it also raises an interesting question. Pita spent only about 5 years in frontline politics before almost becoming prime minister. Campaigning and governing are not the same thing. Winning elections requires diagnosis. Running a government requires execution. Would he have had sufficient experience to govern effectively? The book naturally cannot answer that question. Imagine politics as photography. Most parties use a wide-angle lens. Economy, democracy, the future. Move Forward zoomed in. A farmer without land, a flood victim waiting for compensation, a small brewer blocked by regulation. That is where politics become personal and where votes are won. The strongest sections of this book concern agriculture. You can clearly feel that this is Pita's genuine area of expertise. Before becoming party leader, he spent years working on agricultural issues in parliament. The stories feel lived rather than researched. One example particularly stood out. Pita visits communities around Nong Han Lake in northeastern Thailand. The lake naturally expands and contracts with the seasons. Local livelihoods evolved around this cycle. But government water management ignored these natural rhythms. The result? The lake stores hundreds of millions of cubic meters of water, yet only around 6 to 10% of agricultural land receives irrigation. Farmers face drought when they need water, and floods when crops are ready for harvest. Then comes a shocking statistic. Thailand is one of the world's largest rice exporters. Farmers are often called the backbone of the nation. Yet, according to Pita, only around 1% of Thai farmers are able to export their own rice directly. Only 1%. That statistic completely changes the meaning of backbone. Another example concerns mango farmers. Farmers without land titles cannot obtain GAP certification. Certified mangoes may sell for 100 baht per kilogram. Uncertified ones may sell for only 30 baht. Same farmer, same mango, same effort. One document creates more than the threefold difference in value. Pita argues that poverty often begins with wrongly designed institutions. If the first button is fastened incorrectly, every button afterward will also be wrong. This metaphor appears repeatedly throughout the book, and it is probably one of the book's strongest ideas. One of the most fascinating chapters discusses alcohol regulation. It sounds trivial. It isn't. Pita argues that restrictive alcohol laws protect the large producers while preventing small local businesses from growing. Traditional rice wines, fruit wines, local spirits, craft beers, many remain economically marginalized because of regulations favoring large-scale producers. Pita's argument is simple. Fruit sitting in storage loses value. Fruit transformed into wine gains value. He sees local alcohol production not merely as business, but as culture, tourism, rural development, and economic decentralization. The progressive liquor bill nearly passed the parliament. It failed by only 2 votes. And here Pita makes an interesting observation. People were not discouraged. They became more hopeful because if change lost by only 2 votes, then perhaps change was already close. There is one aspect of the book that disappointed me. Pita describes how his popularity exploded before the 2023 election. As late as March 2023, he was far behind in support. Then suddenly, within weeks, social media exploded. His popularity skyrocketed. Crowds multiplied. Millions of online interactions followed. Naturally, this was exactly the section I most wanted him to analyze. Why did it happen? What changed? What strategic decision created this extraordinary momentum? Surprisingly, Pita largely says he doesn't know. He briefly mentions the phenomenon and moves on. Personally, I found this disappointing because in later interviews, Pita himself suggested that Move Forward's firm anti-military position attracted many voters seeking a decisive break from Thailand's post-coup political order. I wish the book had explored this transformation in much greater depth. It may be one of the most important political stories in modern Thailand. After winning the election, Move Forward assembled an 8-party coalition. Under normal democratic circumstances, forming a government should have been straightforward. But Thailand's constitutional design was different. Under the 2017 constitution, unelected senators also participated in selecting the prime minister. Pita needed 375 votes, and he obtained only 324. Later, parliamentary procedures prevented another vote. Court cases followed. His parliamentary duties were suspended. The political moment disappeared. Reading these chapters, one realizes something uncomfortable. In politics, timing itself is power. Even if illegal challenges are eventually resolved, delayed decision can permanently alter political outcomes. A procedure can become a veto. A legal process can become a political outcome. And this is precisely why the book is called Almost Prime Minister. When I finished this book, my overall assessment remained fairly balanced. I would not call this the memoir of a flawless future statesman, nor would I dismiss it as simply the autobiography of political celebrity. It is somewhere in between. This is the memoir of a politician who spent only 5 years in frontline politics, experienced an extraordinary rise, came within touching distance of becoming prime minister, and then saw both his political career and his party interrupted by the system itself. One interesting observation is that many of Thailand's progressive politicians actually come from relatively privileged backgrounds. Their motivation often does not appear to be dissatisfaction over receiving too small a share of power. Instead, many genuinely seem to want to reform Thailand's political structure. Whether they're right is another question, but their sincerity is difficult to ignore. This book also performs another important function. It links together almost every major political event in Thailand during Pita's 5 years in politics. For readers unfamiliar with Thailand, this makes the memoir extremely valuable. Interestingly, the first foreign language edition was published in Taiwan. that feels entirely natural. The Taiwanese edition contains extensive translator notes explaining Thai political institutions, constitutional arrangements, historical events, and political terminology. So, did this book completely change my opinion of Pita? No. I still think charisma, timing, media appeal, and anti-establishment sentiment played major roles in his success. I still think that outside agriculture, many policy discussions resemble consultant-style analysis based heavily on data. And given his relatively short political career, governing as prime minister might have been extremely challenging. But I now also see someone who worked seriously, mastered certain policy areas, and genuinely tried to change Thailand's political trajectory. Whether he would have succeeded as prime minister, we will never know. But Almost Prime Minister shows us something equally fascinating. What happens when political change approaches power but cannot quite reach it? And perhaps that's why the word almost continues to resonate so strongly in Thailand today.